Hello everybody! Today we are back and we are here to paint. This is going to be the final installment of my zebra unicorn trash gluing monstrosity. And then we're moving on to the next project. So what I have gotten now is just a variety of metallic paints, then a blue, a yellow, a black, and a white, and a brown. And the way I paint is very stupid. It's just, I take colors, I mix them together, I put them in places, I wait, I do a new color, and then at the end I dry brush. And that's pretty much this entire process. I have some metallic golds, some metallic greens, and then a whole shit ton of brown. So I'm very happy that this project is finished. Not because it wasn't fun, this was very fun to do, but it does give me time and the range to free up what I'm gonna do. There's my delicious paint. Don't you want to eat it? Anyone else who really love peeling paint palettes? My art teacher used to do this thing where she had a basket where you would put your paint palette and wait for it to dry out, and then since I was always really done everything because I didn't joke around much in art class, I didn't talk to people basically. I would be done before everyone else was. So yeah, all I did with before filming was prime this in a way. I kind of just painted it white for a couple layers. Not perfect, but good enough. And from that, I just kept on adding these different colors. I switched between a lot of smaller brushes, some bigger brushes, but in the end, it's not a perfect paint job and it doesn't have to be. This isn't exactly a perfect thing. Now, I'm also a massive animal nerd alongside being a pretty intense creative, and I thought that this could be a very fun time to sort of introduce that other aspect of my personality and how and what I like to kind of observe and learn about and share the knowledge of. So we're going to talk about the zebra, which is technically what this thing is based on. A lot of this is from Wikipedia, but I've also done a lot of extensive research on my own time. I just didn't exactly compile it neatly. So I'm gonna go on tangents, and some of the stuff I say may or may not be outdated. I try to keep up with all the zoological discoveries of the time, but it's sometimes a difficult thing. There are so many things going on, and I am only one person. So zebra, those famous little stripy guys. Let's start out by saying that zebra are black with white stripes. Their nose, one of the only places on their body without, a coat, is black. That's their skin. It's a lot like how polar bears have black skin, and their fur isn't even white, it's transparent. Oop-de-doo-dah. I don't know if you shaved a zebra, if it would have imprints of its stripes, because when you shave a tiger, it has imprints of its stripes. But I don't know if that is the same case for zebra. Even so, I think it would be unethical to shave a zebra. Well, we're all very familiar with the zebras who are just striped, so they can do their let's run together in a circle thing and be disruptive pattern, and also flies probably land on us less. Zebras occasionally are born in this sort of spotted pattern. I don't really know what it's called particularly, but it's quite interesting because they definitely are pretty, but they don't exactly tend to last long in the wild. And obviously, if you watched anything or learned anything or read anything about zebras, you know that all of their stripes are unique. That's how they tell each other apart. And everything is unique, I said unique too many times. Anyway, each one has their own individual stripe pattern, like that of a snowflake, There are actually several species of zebra, though it's debated on whether there are 3 or 4 species. The grevy's zebra, the plain zebra, and the mountain zebra. There's possibly 2 types of mountain zebra, but currently the classification is unsure. There's essentially 2 populations of mountain zebras in separate areas. Now, plain zebra is the one pretty much everyone thinks about, and for good reason. They're one of the most Their range is the biggest, they're one of the most densely populated, and they're very famous. They're probably the zebra you think of when you think of a zebra. Now, zebras are one of the few still completely wild equids, or equidus, or equidae, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Well, not pronunciation, how you want to, I think it's the context or the state, like past tense, present tense, future tense, of their genus name, Equus. So this obviously means they're related to horses, donkeys, mules, etc., etc. And again, as I said, they're one of the only species of this genus that is still a completely wild species. We have never been able to domesticate zebras in the same way we domesticated horses and donkeys. One, they're not good for riding. They're too wide, too short, and way too prey trigger. To borrow a word from Casual Geographic, they have this predator-prey complex of when everything around you is trying to eat you, you become hyper-aggressive. And everything in Africa is trying to eat this horse. Everything in eastern and southern Africa, that is. Their habitats mainly consist of savannas, grasslands, woodlands, mountainous areas, and shrublands. Again, the mountainous areas are mostly inhabited by the two possible species of mountain zebra, whereas the ones you typically see are the Grevy zebra and the plain zebra. I really think it's interesting how much we learn about zebra stripes as we're kids or something, but also how little we understand about them. Like, I remember being told over and over again when I was a kid that the zebras, like, stripes were so when they ran together as a herd, predators would get confused and couldn't, like, pick out individuals. And while that could be completely true, there's also all this shit about, zebras using stripes to identify each other. And also the idea that flies will land on them less and bite on them less because of the stripes, which has been kind of proven because I believe there was an experiment done where horses were given zebra-esque blankets when they were out to graze, and the ones who wore those had less fly bites at the end, which is interesting. As someone who rode horses, I definitely think they deserve less fly bites. Those poor things. Zebras, as you could probably understand from documentaries and everything else you've seen about them, are primarily grass-grazing animals who eat mostly low-quality grass. Oftentimes, zebras are the first of, herbivorous animals to find a fresh, area. So they eat probably the top layer of grass, the hardy stuff, before stuff like the wildebeest and other herbivores come in. It's quite interesting that they're this sort of early lawnmower. They are mostly preyed upon by lions and hyenas, and lions are interesting animals, but I will talk about them maybe another time. Zebras are also so hyper-aggressive, it's interesting to me. I mean, I touched on this briefly. Everything's trying to eat them, so they're obviously going to be aggressive in return. But they are just incredibly aggressive. Like most horses, they have a hell of a kick. And they can also bite. And again, horse teeth are scary. Listen, I used to ride horses, okay? I never want to get bit by one of those things. I've been stepped on by a horse. I have not been bit by a horse, which I'm eternally grateful for. But zebras are just kind of mean in general. Like, they're not just mean to their predators. They have a very interesting sort of social behavior. Zebras live in a harem or harem, depending on how you pronounce it, and led by one dominant male and a lot of mares and their foals and offspring. The males obviously fight for control of the harem, and from that, the strongest one gets to keep all the females and all the foals in it. Now, that doesn't apply to the Grevy zebra. They live alone or in very loose herds, but it applies to the other species of zebra, so the mountain zebra and the plain zebra. It's very interesting. I think the attitude towards what animals are considered to be cruel in the wild is vastly misunderstood, because nature isn't cruel, nature isn't mean, nature isn't evil, nature is nature. they're surviving. So the fact that the male zebras will, like, once they take over a harem, attack any foals that aren't theirs, try to rid a female of pregnancy that isn't theirs, so their genes can be passed on, isn't because zebras are actually assholes. It's because that is how they are programmed to survive. Nature isn't cruel, and we should not be applying human emotions to nature. It's funny, and we can definitely do it for fun, but we all have to understand at the end of the day that it's just how they're surviving. So if the Grevy zebra doesn't hold the normal harem thing with a stallion and mare, then what do? They establish a territory and then attract females, which is a pretty common form of, like, you know, attracting a mate. This is called polygandrios, I think. I can't pronounce words. But a lot of species do this. They communicate through vocalizations, body posture, facial expressions, and grooming. This strengthens their bonds in mostly the plains and the mountain zebra. Again, the Grevy zebra is not very social. They're very recognizable, and I think a lot of people kind of think of them first when you think of mammals in Africa. I mean, I know I certainly do. They've been thought of as exotic and beautiful and highly sought after. And although they aren't exactly endangered, there have been cases where they are. I mean, okay, the typical plain zebra is not endangered, but the Grevy zebra is, and the mountain zebra is vulnerable. And then the plain zebra itself is near threatened. If you don't know IUCN status, basically you can be, oh gosh, I need to look up IUCN status. How have I forgotten this? You know, for someone who's going into conservation biology, I really should have this memorized. But anyway, for the IUCN status, this is basically what scientists use to estimate the populations and kind of denote how endangered or lack thereof a species may be in the wild. There are some lesser known ones, such as not evaluated, which is represented by NE, which means we just have not evaluated the species populations. There's DD, data deficient, which means we have tried to evaluate the species population, but just do not know. And then we move on to the more commonly known ones. LC, least concern, means the populations are typically stable and are not in need of human intervention. We have NT, near threatened, that's one step down from least concern. Their populations are possibly going down or look like they may go down in the future. We have VU, which is vulnerable, again, another step down from near threatened, and that means the populations are starting to look worrying and continue to look worrying. They are continuing to go downwards. We have endangered EN, which is the one most people know. It means the species is endangered of being, removed from the wild, and there should be active conservation put towards making sure they are not endangered. Critically endangered means this situation is dire, this species is extremely close to being extinct in the wild, and we should be very cautious and work towards their conservation. We have EW, again, a lesser known one, which is extinct in the wild. Also critically endangered is represented by CR, and endangered is represented by EN. Extinct in the wild, represented by EW, means the species may exist in captivity under breeding programs, zoos, conservation places, and private collections, but they do not exist. There are no populations still existing in the wild. And then, of course, extinct, which is EX, which just means in general the species is no longer alive. What's interesting to me is that 99.9% of all species that have ever lived on Earth are extinct, yet we still have such incredible biodiversity. So, I don't know, it fascinates me. It makes me really respect the natural world. So yeah, out of the 3 accepted species of the zebra, none of them are in the least concern section. Now, obviously, as I stated quite near the beginning, zebras are one of the few equids that have never been domesticated. But there was another species of, or at least a close related species of plain zebra called the quagga that was driven to extinction in the 19th century. Quaggas are really interesting to me. They're quite beautiful. I think they're gorgeous. They have this like fawn-esque color. And yeah, they are a type of plain zebra. They're just like a subspecies, essentially. And they are recently extinct. And I think that brings to mind the fact that, yeah, species aren't just extinct from hundreds of millions of years ago. There are species that were alive maybe a couple decades ago and that are no longer living. Now, zebra, the word zebra, or zebra, depending on where you're from, it derives from a couple different languages in Europe, mostly Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. And of course, origins always lie in Latin, equiforus, meaning wild horse. It appears to have entered most of the words. The word equiforus, wild horse, kind of entered the Portuguese language as ezerbo, or zebra, or zebro, which was originally used for an unknown horse reported in the wilds of the Iberian Peninsula during like around the Middle Ages. An Italian explorer later on in, I think, near the 1590s, but this Italian explorer recorded the zebra being used to refer to like African animals by the Portuguese visitors to the continent. And in ancient times, the zebra was called hippotigris, horse tiger, by the Greeks and Romans, which I think is quite a badass name, and I think that should have been kept. And yeah, I want a horse tiger. Give me a horse tiger. I'm gonna make a horse tiger. Oh my god, new project. Let's make a horse tiger. Should I make it a doll or a piece of trash? I don't know. I could use my Toralei body. Could be fun. Could be fun! Anyway, the word zebra traditionally is pronounced with a long initial letter, zebra, but of course 20th century pronunciation is insane, and we have the British English and the American English of zebra and zebra. Pronounce it as you please, because it is a local and dialect thing. Of course, as mentioned before, zebras are from the Equus genus, equines, equidae, alongside horses and donkeys, also known as asses. These are the only living members of the Equidae family. If you want to talk subgenus, which I certainly do, both the plain zebra and the mountain zebra are placed in the subgenus Hippotigris. Again, that's our horse tiger. And the Gravi zebra is considered the sole species of the Dyriochiohippus. Dyriochiohippus. I'm trying. I'm Greek. I should really have like no issue with these pronunciations. Dyriochiohippus. This basically a separate subgenus from the Hippotigris, the Dyriochiohippus, and their Gravi zebra is the only member. However, some other folks have placed all three species in the Hippotigris, and a phylogenetic study found that the plain zebra is actually more closely related to the Gravi zebra than the mountain zebra. So the kind of subgenus classifications are up in the air. The quagga, our interesting little extinct guy, was originally said to be a distinct species, but later genetic studies placed it in the same thing as the plain zebra, meaning it's a subspecies, or just a very like isolated population. Basically, the zebra genus is considered to be a monophyly genus, which means the clade or taxonomic group of these individuals have a pretty most recent common ancestor, and there are no like non-descendants of this common ancestor. It's just a very kind of, this entire genus is quite close together, but there are slight differences sort of thing. The word equus originated in North America, and it was a paleogenomic sequencing of a very old Pleistocene horse metapodial bone, which implies a date of 4.07 million years ago for the most recent common ancestor of all equines. Horses split from asses and zebras around that time of 4 million years ago and colonized Eurasia and Africa. And around 2 to 3 million years ago, zebras and asses diverged from each other more closely in that like 2 million range. So basically, if you're thinking about it, horses split off from this zebra-ass group earlier to about 4 million years ago, and then around 2 million years, donkeys and zebras split off from each other. Overall, it's actually a pretty small clade. I'm used to like these massive clades in my studies, but yeah, it's quite interesting how few individual species that are accepted. Because a lot of horse breeds exist, but we don't see breeds as species. If you're into dog history and how dogs work and all that, and how breeding works, you'd know that at a point in time we tried to make species for all dog breeds, and then we realized that's not really how things work. But you basically have the mountain zebra, the plain zebra, the Grevy zebra, a couple different types of donkey, and then a horse, and then the Podorotsky's wild horse. Now maybe we can go through the different zebras and kind of talk about, their differences. So the Grevy zebra is actually thought to be one of the biggest zebras. It is around 300 centimeters in body length, and if you go in inches, that's around 118 inches. This is where they max out. Tail length, they can go from around 38 centimeters to 75 centimeters, 15 to 30 inches. Shoulder height, which is from ground to withers, would be 125 to 160 centimeters, or 49 inches and 63 inches. And they weigh around 352 to 450 kilograms, or 776 to 992 pounds. The Grevy zebra has a longer, thin skull. They have a very thick neck and conical ears. They have more condensed, thin striping with a concentric rump stripe and a white belly and tail, which plain zebra I don't believe have. They have a ashier muzzle and a white line around that muzzle. They're found in Eastern Africa and mostly populate semi-arid grasslands and shrublands. They have 46 chromosomes, which I think is funny that we're listing them. The plain zebra, the one we all know and love, goes from around 217 centimeters to 246 centimeters, or 85 to 97 inches, which again does put them at quite a bit less in size comparison to the Grevy zebra. Their tail length ranges from around 47 to 56 centimeters, which makes their tail longer than the Grevy's if you are comparison, which is also equal to 19 to 22 inches. From withers to the ground, they are 110 to 145 centimeters, or 43 inches and 75 inches, and they can weigh from around 175 to 385 kilograms, or 386 to 849 pounds. God, I hate American measurements. These guys are a little bit shorter. They're thick-bodied. They have more rounded or obtusely shaped skulls with a more pronounced forehead and a recessed nose area. They have broader stripes, which are horizontal on the rump, and their northern populations have more extensive white striping, while populations further south have white legs and bellies and more brown shadow-esque fur. And the stripes, well, the snout is black. These guys are found mostly in Eastern and Southern Africa, in either savanna, grasslands, and open woodlands. And they have 44 chromosomes, not 46. The mountain zebra, though we aren't defining the two possible subspecies here, can be around 210 centimeters to 260 centimeters, or 83 to 102 inches in body length. Their tail length can range from 40 centimeters to 55 centimeters, or 16 inches to 22 inches. Their shoulder height from ground to withers can be 116 centimeters to 146 centimeters, or 46 inches and 75 inches. And they weigh from 204 pounds to 204 to 430 kilograms, and 450 to 948 pounds. These guys have kind of more circular eyes, and their eyes are positioned farther back on their head. They have a square chest and a dewlap present under their neck, which is a sort of a expansive skin. This is kind of one of their most key and differing features. They have extremely compact hooves. Stripes are kind of intermediate in width, and they're sort of like that middle ground between the grevies and the plain zebra in terms of having more sparse stripes or more densely packed stripes. They have horizontal stripes on their rump, and the belly is white, and the muzzle is black and lined with chestnut or orange, which makes them very pretty in my opinion. They're one of the prettiest zebras, in my opinion. These guys exclusively live in the southwestern African mountains, rocky uplands, and Karoo shrubland. And they have 32 chromosomes. We just got smaller and smaller. Now, obviously, the zebra and the horses as general seem to be a very, almost recent genus, but that's not entirely true. There are fossils of these guys. In addition to the current living species, there are fossilized zebras and relatives. E. owenianus odowenensis. E. odowenensis was identified was identified in around 1.8 million years ago, and there are a lot of fossil skulls of another species, E. marutanicus, from Algeria, which date to around 1 million years ago. This shows affinities to the plain zebra, E. capucinus, and the Cape zebra, which appeared around 2 million years ago and lived throughout southern and eastern Africa. So there are some possibly recently extinct species of zebra that we just don't have anymore. But it's also possible these are just slight changes to the modern zebras we have and love. Hybridization is always an interesting topic for me, and the fact that zebras can be discussed in it makes them 20 times more interesting to me. But because the Equidae genus is quite close, and we have seen multiple forms of hybridization within it, it's no surprise, really, that they can hybridize. I mean, the mule is quite literally an entire kind of almost species that is just a result of hybridization. I'm quite obsessed with hybridization. I'd love to make an entire video about the topic, but for now, let's talk about it in zebras. Fertile hybrids are one of the rarest forms of hybrids ever, and the fact that they can happen at all is insane. But there have been reported fertile hybrids between the plains and the Grevy zebra, which does make the most sense for a fertile hybrid to appear. These are two species who are highly closely related and have very similar amounts of chromosomes. The reason most hybridized species are not able to reproduce is because their chromosomes aren't matched up. They can't... Essentially, when two species create a zygote, they kind of split up their chromosomes and match them together. But when you have two different species, those chromosomes aren't in line with each other, and you can swap an eye color gene for a paw size gene. And while that's not an entirely accurate description, it's a simplified sort of version of what happens. But in species that are so similar, such as two slightly altered species of zebra, the Grevies and the plains, hybridization can work out into fertile, stable hybrids, which is extremely rare and extremely interesting. It can be also a possible result that the offspring is infertile. They are not always fertile, but that is only due to, again, the slight difference between the chromosome numbers. Again, if you'll remember, one has 46 and the other has 44 chromosomes. So again, it's still not a perfect match. These sort of hybrid species have been bred in the wild, yes, but there are also captive zebras that have been bred with horses and donkeys. These are known as zebroids. A zorse is a cross between a zebra and a horse, and a zonkey is a zebra and a donkey, and a zony is a zebra and a pony. All of these zebroids are normally completely sterile and are born as dwarfs, which essentially just means they're much smaller. So while we can have a Grevies and a Plains hybrid often in the wild, all these zebroids hybrids are pretty much exclusively man-made. It's interesting to me that zebras and donkeys are so different from horses in a way. I understand that they split off at completely different times, but it's still interesting because, you know, horses are so big. They're so long, majestic, and stretchy, and like most other equids, zebras are barrel-chested with tufted tails, which horses don't have. They have beautiful long tails, unless you're talking about specific breeds, but, you know, they have tufted tails. They have manes that stand tall, not hang. They're shorter, stockier, more built for grazing, and their dentation is full of large incisors, which they do share with horses. If you didn't know, some zebra males have like spade-shaped canine teeth, which are used for fighting. So no, those teeth are not just for grinding up grass. Those teeth are for fighting each other. Like most prey species, the zebras have eyes at the side and far up their head, which allows them to look over tall grass or look kind of almost all the way around them for danger. And their beautifully long ears are able to kind of swivel around and find sounds. Zebras actually have longer front legs than back legs, which I find very interesting, which means they kind of have like a front-heavy stance, if you think about it. And they have a relatively small skull size with a straight dorsal outline, protruding eye sockets, a narrow rostrum bridge, and a separation of the metacondyle and metacetal of the tooth canal. I think they're very interesting, and I think it's quite funny that you can see sort of the difference between when horses split off and when zebras and donkeys split off, because I think zebras and donkeys look much more alike and have many more similarities that make me think they could be related. Though I guess ponies and mini horses also, I don't know. Horses are the weird ones here. It's not the zebras who are the weird ones. Young foals of zebras are kind of similar. Their stripes often get a little more defined when they grow, but they have the stripes. It's not like they develop them. It's not like, friggin' Dalmatians where their spots pop up. But yeah. I don't know. I think zebras are cool. They like to migrate as well. They're really cool for that. I think they have some of the longest migrations in Africa, which is impressive because Africa is full of extremely long migrating groups of species. There are herds that migrate so far across Africa, it's insane. They have been recorded traveling around 500 kilometers or 310 miles between Namibia and Botswana, and it is again one of the longest land migrations of mammals in Africa. They rely on their memory and predict weather conditions, and it's just really cool. Plain zebras are actually supposed to be more water dependent than the other species of zebra, and they normally are only found 10 to 12 kilometers from a water source. The Gravy zebra can survive a week without water, but will drink it every day if given the chance. And the mountain zebras can be found at elevations up to 2,000 meters or 6,600 feet. So, sometimes water's not the most available there. They all tend to sleep during the day, standing up, or even laying down at night if they can. And they like to rub against things, which is cute, and scratch themselves. Again, touching on their predators, they are preyed mainly upon by lions, but again, everything in this fucking planet is trying to eat them. So leopards, cheetahs, spotted hyenas, brown hyenas, wild dogs, all pose a threat. And they aren't as effective in fighting off big cats, but they are quite dangerous. I would never say zebras are pushovers. Overall, I think zebras are extremely interesting horses, extremely interesting animals, and deserve our respect and continued admiration. And I guess that's why I made this piece. I hope to never see a multi-headed robotic zebra unicorn, but if there was one, I guess it would look like this. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did, if you enjoyed it, please like. It really makes me happy and makes me think my art is appreciated, and people are interested in what I'm doing. I'm a little conflicted on what I'm going to do next, but I know it's going to be fun. So, thank you very much, and have a very good day. Bye-bye! Because I'm Ace, and this is my art.